Hi.
Good afternoon.
Second.
What was it?
I wasn't sure if she sneezed or anything. You girls have got mute.
Okay. We're on page 19.
Yeah.
I think we did the page, except for number 12.
Except?
Number 12.
Yes.
And I think also number 5. So again, what? Number 10?
Yeah.
Number 10 also, right? So let's start with number 12, which we started with.
Page 19.
Page 19. Yeah. So number 12 is a quote also from Divrei Chachamim b'nachas nishmaim. The words of the wise are spoken softly. There's an interesting statement written by the Rambam, where he writes that people think the way to recognize a chacham, a wise person, is from his classes, from his teachings. You can see how smart he is. But the Rambam says really the way to recognize a wise person is not only from his teachings, but from everything he does. And he gives a list of 10 things, from the way he walks, and the way he talks, and the way he interacts with people. And everything that he does will be an indication whether he's a wise person or he's a foolish person. It's not just what comes out of the person's mouth. So one of the things he mentions is this quote, Divrei Chachamim, the words of the wise are spoken softly, which means when a person has something to say that has content, you don't have to scream it. When a person has something which is empty, things that are empty need to be loud because otherwise there's no substance to it. So if it's loud, then it has substance. If it's empty, then you have to be loud. So again, it doesn't mean that you have to make an effort to speak very low. It just means it's the normal speech. That's what it means. The other thing about speech, so remember in this Mishnah, it uses the words number 4, whoever engages in excessive talk brings on sin. Because we came to the conclusion that when it says in the Mishnah that there's nothing better than silence, it doesn't mean that speech is no good. Speech is very important. The Torah is speech, all the classes are speech. So many mitzvahs have to do with speech, all the brachas are speech. It can't be that we're telling us, what it means is not to engage in excessive speech, which means unnecessary talk and talk that has no content to it. So number 5, you have the quote, which is called Amoisiv Gereya. Whoever adds is actually eliminating. What does that mean? It means it's based on a pasuk. There's a pasuk in Chumash that says these are the commandments of the Torah. Don't add to them and don't eliminate from them. Which means there's 613 mitzvahs, and that's what it is. Don't add more mitzvahs to the 613 and don't take away any of them. But it also means another thing. In each mitzvah itself, you're not allowed to add or eliminate. For example, tefillin. Tefillin has in it 4 portions of the Torah. If somebody would say, there's another portion which is really a very good one, let me put that also into the tefillin. That's called adding to the mitzvah. That's violating a commandment. If somebody says, I'll only put in 3 portions instead of 4, it's also violating. So one says do not add, and one says do not subtract. So the Gemara says, the way it's phrased in the Chumash means to say that sometimes by adding, you actually subtract. A person thinks, if I'm subtracting, which is I'm doing less than I'm supposed to, that's not good. What if I do more than I'm supposed to? Not always is that also good. Very often doing more than you're supposed to could sometimes be subtracting. If you wear a garment that's more than what you're supposed to, like it's longer than your size, you can actually trip over it and get hurt. So you can't say, well, I have to have a garment that the material is going to cover my entire body, but I'll be even better than that. I'll make double the material that I need. Double the material you need, you won't look so great and you can get hurt. And the same thing with other things. So not always just because it's good doesn't mean, but the Gemara says when you're adding, you're actually taking away. So same thing here with speech. If the speech is done in the right way, measured, calculated, and with content, and then it's a good thing. But if it's excessive speech, and actually you're not adding, you're taking away. Yeah.
How do you know what the fine line is whenever you're trying to like put a fence? Like we make fences and then we make fences around those fences, so like how do we know like when that is just a fence or whenever it's changing the mitzvah?
Right. Well, first of all, one would ask a question, what about all the things that the Chachamim, the sages added? Like we're coming to Hanukkah now. Hanukkah is a yontif that's not in the Chumash. Is that considered added? And all the laws that the Chachamim instituted, laws of Muktzah, many other laws that were instituted in later generations. So again, the Rambam explains that as well. And he says that when they instituted, they didn't say we're adding to the Torah. They said that this is being done as a fence, or they said that it's being done to enhance a certain mitzvah. But we're not initiating something new. And therefore, it's not considered a thing which goes against Torah. So when a person adds, there are certain things you add that will enhance the mitzvah, and certain situations you add that will be the opposite. In fact, it could be even the same thing. For one person, it would enhance his observance, and for another person, it would do the opposite. So, for example, if a person is not up to that point yet,
like Pesach.
Yeah. I remember I told you a story here in the dorm that there was once someone who came to visit here for Shabbos. She was not religious. She just wanted to have an experience, see what it's like. And she actually came to the dorm, and she made herself a cup of tea. Uh-oh. And one of the girls said, wait a second, you have to have a kli shlishi, And she felt embarrassed that she's doing the wrong thing. She's violating Shabbos, and she just picked herself up in the middle of Shabbos, went back to New Jersey. Why? Because this is not for her. This is something which would only be a stumbling block. When a person is first becoming religious, we do step by step. And the reason is because if they take on too much in one shot, it's going to backfire, which means your adding is actually going to end up subtracting. So then what's too much? So you can't give a general rule about that because that depends on the individual, the circumstances, and everything else that's involved. Sometimes just thinking or picturing what would be if I would do this, would this make me stronger? Or could this lead to the opposite? Could help a person recognize where I'm going with this. Number 10 is a term that's also found in Torah, which means nivul peh, means an unclean mouth. Unclean means a person's speech should be refined, not to use words that are the opposite of refined language, foul language, but it even goes a step further. The Rebbe takes this a step further. If you listen to the Rebbe speaking, or you look into Sichos, it means in general not even to use terms that are negative, destructive, violent, but to use terms like the Rebbe would say, this could lead to the opposite of life. This leads to the opposite of good.
Don't say bad, say not good.
Right, so you watched that video, very good, okay. Basically, it means that what comes out of our mouth should be refined. So that's another thing about speech, that this is, now, while we're on this, I want to add, I just touched on it before, but I think maybe I'll just give a little bit of an explanation. we touched on the fact that a human being is called medaber. Remember, we asked the question that there are 4 categories. The 4th category is the human category. Human category should have been called the intellect or the intellectual, instead of we call them the one that speaks. Is that the uniqueness and the greatness and the superiority of a person that he speaks? The superiority of a person is that he is intelligent. But this alludes to the fact that, which is something which is found in Torah, and it's elaborated a lot on, explained a lot in Chassidus. And there's a whole chapter in Tanya on this, and that is that speech is something which is very powerful in terms of bringing out a deeper dimension of a person through speech, which means if a person is studying something, thinking about it, and then they give a class and they're explaining it to someone, when they bring it out of their mouth to explain it to another person, they will find that they will see new depth in what they were thinking about as they bring it out in speech. In other words, often it happens, and many teachers can testify this, that they're debating how they're going to explain this to their students. It's a very difficult subject, and they're thinking, and they don't really have a sort of a clear way how to do it, but after give the class, starts teaching. As they start teaching, suddenly an idea comes to them that didn't come before. Suddenly new depth of understanding comes that it didn't have before. Why is that? So Chassidus explained that the power to speak comes from a deeper part of a person's neshama than the power of intellect. So this is based on the fact that speech is not something technical. In other words, one way of looking at speech is something just very technical. I have a voice, and the voice, if my voice hits my teeth, then a tzaddik comes out. So if it hits my tongue, then a lamed comes out, the l sound. If it hits my lips, it's a beis, a mem, and so on. In other words, it's just a technical thing, but it's not a technical thing because no human being thinks before they speak, how should I move my mouth? How should I move my teeth? How should I move my tongue? You want to say these words and they just come out. So the truth is there's a certain faculty of power in the neshama, which is the power of speech. And that power of speech is actually deeper than the power of intellect. So when I study Torah or really any subject, and I bring it out verbally, it has in it the power to bring out something deeper in me than before I spoke about it. And the same emotionally. This is something maybe everyone could have experienced or watched someone experience, which is, I'm upset about something. I'm upset. Okay. Then someone asks me, why are you upset? And I start talking about it. And as I'm talking, I'm getting more and more upset and I'm flying off the handle. I wasn't like that before. Why am I getting all upset now? In fact, speech is external compared to thought. So before, when I thought about it, I didn't get all on fire. And now, as I'm speaking, I'm falling apart. The answer is because speech brings out deeper depth of emotion and deeper depth of intellect. And the reason for that is because speech has a source in the neshama. The power to speak comes from a deeper place than even the power of intellect. And that's why it's important to speak words that are positive and have words that are negative, because speech could reach and sort of impact a very deep place in a person's neshama.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So you're saying the power of speech is deeper than the power of our intellect, but I thought that our thought, like intellect, is higher than speech, and speech than action.
No, so the actual speech is lower than intellect.
But that's actual
speech,
but
but the
the
source of it,
power
right?
of the speech is deeper or higher, I guess, than the power of the intellect.
Yeah, it is part of the intellect, but it's deeper than the part.
So the power of action deeper than the power of speech?
No, we don't find this by action, we find this by speech.
Just by speech.
Yeah. And that's why a human being is called a medaber. Okay, now we'll turn the page. This is a continuation. And that is when you talk about speech, one of the things that stand out the most is the subject of Lashon Hara. So Lashon Hara is an Aveira, one of the sins that are related to speech. And Lashon Hara means gossip. It's a prohibition in the Torah that you're not allowed to speak against another person. And there's so many details to this. What's the most famous? First, if you look in the Shulchan Aruch, there's a section that talks about Lashon Hara, what you're not allowed to say when you talk about other people. But there's actually a book, which is one of the most famous books, a book of Torah, which was written by someone called the Chafetz Chaim. It's called Guard Your Tongue. It's based on a pasuk where it says, guard your tongue from speaking bad. And he compiled all the halachas that are related to not speaking Lashon Hara. So they say that someone once said to him, I read your book and I feel after reading your book, I can't even open my mouth. This is Lashon Hara, that's Lashon Hara, the other thing is Lashon Hara. So he said, no, now you can open your mouth. Before the book, you couldn't open your mouth because maybe you're speaking Lashon Hara. Now you know what is Lashon Hara and what is not Lashon Hara. But the truth is that the laws are very complicated, but the general principle behind it is I'm not allowed to speak to others about something negative that somebody did. So the strict halacha of Lashon Hara is if I'm the one that's publicizing it. In other words, nobody know about it. And in Torah, nobody knows means that you don't have at least you don't have yet three people that know about the incident. And then I talk to others about it, so I'm publicizing it. And that's the essence of Lashon Hara. Other cases, even though it might not be halachically like strict halacha Lashon Hara, but it's definitely in the spirit of Lashon Hara, and it's also a negative thing. So in general, I remember once we had a student that she got all excited and she went back to her mother, was telling her about, I don't want to talk about this because it's Lashon Hara, and that's Lashon Hara. And the mother was asking her, what is Lashon Hara all about? And she said, well, if that's the case, there's nothing to talk about. Because most conversation that people have ends up being about this neighbor or this relative or that relative. And that's what the conversations are all about. But in the Torah, we have to be very careful. And there's a lot that's been said about Lashon Hara. But the phrase that you have here on the page 20, on top of the page, is probably the most, I would say, the most strongest phrase that I've seen, the strongest quote. And that is Shkula Lashon Hara. Gossip is equivalent to Avodah Zarah, Gila Rayas, and Shvichas Damim. All three things. To idolatry, adultery, and murder. Which means that obviously this is something that can cause such destruction. Like we mentioned, we spoke about this a little bit before, that wars can be started by Lashon Hara. Families can be destroyed by Lashon Hara, where one person tells another person, you know what this person did, you know what this person said, and then one thing leads to another. And once it comes out of your mouth, it's pretty much beyond you. So that's another thing that's important to remember when it comes to speech. In Yiddish, there's a quote, but of course you can say it in any language. It's something to always remember when it comes to speech. And the quote is, whatever I haven't said today, I can always say tomorrow. Whatever I said and came out of my mouth, I can't take back. When you say something to another person, now those words are in their head, you can do whatever you want. They're going to do with those words the way whatever it does to them. And now it's out of your hand. So if a person wants to say something and they have an urge to say something, or especially if they're all emotional and they want to say something, the smart thing to do is say to yourself, wait a second, I'm all worked up right now. I don't know what's going to come out of my mouth. Let me not say it today. Give myself a chance to just relax and do this in a more coherent way. And tomorrow, I can always say what I wanted to say today. Even if I missed out, I can do it after tomorrow. I can do it in 3 days. But something which I did say, I can never take back. Yeah.
I don't know. I was just thinking about it. It's intense.
Yeah.
Yeah, this time we're like,
Ruminating.
you're like, oh, wait, take that back. It's not, yeah, take it back.
Right. In writing, you can do that. You can delete things. But in speech, once it's said, the other person heard it,
Sorry.
then you can't
And
do
when
that.
they hear it,
Yeah. Yes, Sheila.
What is the root of the word here, like ushvikat? Because examine is blood, right?
Which word? Shvichat?
Yeah.
Spilling.
Spilling blood, okay.
Spilling blood. I remember in relationship, this is really very, very important. I remember once speaking to a couple that there was, some issues there that had to be ironed out. And she brought up something to him that, remember, you said this and this to me. He said to her that when he married her, he really didn't care to marry her, but she was just harassing him so much. So he said yes. So she said that. He said, come on, you know that I was only kidding. I only said it because I was angry and I wanted to. But, you can't change it. Once you say those words, it's ringing in her head. And any time he did something like that, she realized, oh, he really never cared to me in the first place. He never loved me in the first place. You can't take it back. It's just, and this was like 5 years ago that happened. And sometimes it can go back 40 years later and still in a person's head. So,
Yeah, that's
Again-
why one of the things that are not allowed in a relationship is like certain words shouldn't be allowed to be said, like I actually hate you, or like I never wanted to marry you.
I guess it's also weird.
right. Well, when people are upset,
Don't assume things.
I'll tell you a little secret. When people are upset, guess what? Your mouth has a life of its own. It just decides to say what he wants to say. And you might be, while it's happening, saying, no, don't say that. That's going to cost you your job. You're going to lose your job. You're going to lose your relationship. And the mouth keeps going because you're so upset. So really, the root of it really is anger. But when I'm angry inside, all the thoughts that are rushing in my head is one thing. Once it comes out in speech, it's in someone else's hand now, and it's beyond repair.
I
Yeah.
heard something about, that was,
What?
I heard something about when I was learning Tanya with someone that a person can think bad, but act nice to you. So it's like, inside it might, not,
Right. It doesn't mean that you should think that way, but it means
Right.
even if you think bad, but at least in action. Yeah,
But
right.
like, that's just really weird, it's like, I don't know.
Because usually if you're thinking negative, it's going to come out in speech.
But
Yes.
it's good, but like, still, you shouldn't even think about it,
Right.
like, think good.
Yes, Leva?
When you like to hear Lashon Hara, what's the best thing to do? It's like a little practical.
Is it what's hard, like, in
Go away.
game?
Well, that's the thing I was going to go to. The Gemara says,
I just thought, maybe you have to point out someone did something, kind of say it, like, to a police. Well, to a police, you would have to say it, but like, to say something really bad, or you have to say something without saying like,
so every situation is different. But let me just answer that question first. The other question was, so the Gemara says the Lashon Hara is really the two people involved, the one that's speaking and the one that's listening. So I'm not allowed to speak. And if I do speak, you shouldn't be listening. Because if there's no one listening, I have no one to speak to. So we're both liable. We're both responsible there. But your question is, practically speaking, what happens if someone's talking Lashon Hara to me? Do I just go like this and say, no, I don't want to hear what you're saying? Also depends who it is.
Your instinct is right. I have another question. It might be like more on a case by case basis, but is there like a specific teshuva to do for Lashon Hara? Like I know like biblically, right? Like Miriam had to like stay outside and stuff and like
that was Torah, yeah,
yeah. So
yeah, Torah.
but for Lashon Hara, but like
In the times of the biblical times, as you say, there was Metzora, there was leprosy. That was the atonement for Lashon Hara. Today we don't have that. And
Now we
but
just have to,
it's basically doing tshuva. When you do Shemona Esrei, you say Hashamnu to sincerely ask Hashem for forgiveness. And to make a resolution, not to do it again, that's the most powerful thing that changes and turns things around. I mean, you don't want to feel like you're weird in society. So I think either what you need to do sometimes is just try to change the subject. Usually it's not hard. You watch people have a conversation, you say one word, you can easily change. They forget they were talking about this, they go over to that, and you change the subject. Again, if it's someone that you feel that you can talk to them, it's okay to say, I don't think we should have this discussion. It's really not appropriate. You might want to say, oh, this Lashon Hara, it sounds like I'm so holy, and you're not. But you might just say, I don't want to have this discussion. I don't think it's a good discussion to have. And sometimes you can't do that because of the person that you're talking to. You just find a way to try to save the subject. If you can't, then you just try not to pay attention. The most you can do. Yeah.
Isn't it sometimes it's like, could seem like Lashon Hara, but it's really that someone needs to release something and like maybe you could help or just be listening.
So generally speaking, if a person needs to speak to a mashpia, needs to speak to a therapist, and they have to tell them what happened in order to get the help that they need, it's definitely the right thing to do. But it's limited. I'm talking to this person. But if I have to talk to everybody about it, that's a different story. That's number one. Number two, even when I speak to a therapist, sometimes it's not necessary to know who it is. Sometimes it is necessary because let's say if it's a family member or it's someone that you have to know and understand the dynamics, so you have to know who it is. But if it's talking to someone to help me heal, to help me deal with it, to help me overcome it, it's not Lashon Hara. But when it's a conversation for the sake of a conversation, to badmouth someone, that's Lashon Hara. Yeah, there are more details to this. Let's go all the way back to the bottom of the page for a second. There's another category. Lashon Hara really is a general category for anything you say negative about another person is inappropriate. But on the bottom of the page, number 6 is a specific category, which is Motzei Shemra. What does that mean? Creating a bad name. Lashon Hara could be that you're actually telling the truth. What you're telling someone really happened, but it's negative and it's bad reflection on that person. And therefore, it's something which is inappropriate. Motzei Shemra is where you're actually fabricating a story that's not true. So it's also in that category. It has a separate name. It's called Motzei Shemra. You're creating a bad name, which means you're creating something which never really happened. And that's also something which is inappropriate. Then there's a third category, which is number 5, which is Rechilus. So here, it'll question exactly where you draw that line. But Rechilus means sometimes not even talking about bad things, just talking to one person about other people, where they were and what they did and who they spoke to. And sometimes that could lead to negative things because you don't always know what's behind it and what's the relationship between this person that you're talking to and the person that you're talking about. So sometimes Rechilus means really comes from the word peddler. People who like to just peddle information from one person to the next. You know what he said, you know what she said, you know what he did, you know what she did. And very often that could also lead to fighting. In other words, this person never knew about this and they never would have known and nothing ever would have happened. But you telling this and this happened, you're creating an awareness that awareness is going to cause a rift between two people. And eventually the damage could be, have a domino effect. You don't even know how far it can go. So in general, we have to just avoid the topic of discussion should be about subjects, not about people. About ideas, not about people. It's a very, very complicated subject. As we said, that's why there's a whole sefer with all the details in the halacha. But to be continued tomorrow, Mr. Hashem, we'll go a little more into it. So try to contain yourself at least until tomorrow.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rabbi Majeski.
You're welcome.
Oh, I thought it was hard.
By the way, Rabbi.